Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with the story in which our OP's family treated him disrespectfully, and he got back at them in a very interesting way. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Look after my kids? Again? Back when I was a teenager, my aunt would ask me to babysit her kids. It didn't happen often, so I really didn't mind as long as she bought me pizza and her 2 children were well behaved. Anyway, she was a divorcee, and after a couple of years, she remarried. His kids were all right as well, and I didn't mind babysitting for them when they asked me to about 3 months after their wedding. This is when it starts going downhill. Firstly, no pizza. Second, they came home 3 hours later than they said they would, and didn't give me a lift home. I'm 16 at this point and a very big guy, so no worries walking home, but it was about 2 a.m. in the morning. Then they started to take advantage. Almost every week they wanted me to look after their kids for no pay and would get extremely pissy about it if I refused, often having a go at my mother, who would cry. I hated that. Fine. So they called me to look after their kids so they could go and do their regular, we'll be home by 10, but we mean 1 a.m. Me. Okie dokie. I rocked up. Sure enough, no food aside from the kids' dinner. I raided their fridge. Then at about midnight, I woke the kids up, took them into the lounge, and put on a video. They were a little confused, but excited to be up at that time. I then gave each of them a can of Red Bull and a packet of lollies. About 20 minutes later, the parents showed up, and I left. They never asked me to babysit for them again. Apparently, they shouted at my mother, and Dad told me off, but he couldn't stop laughing, so I wasn't in too much trouble. Good for you, quick thinker. But it makes you wonder why people who are related to you can be such jerks. And our second story. Try to intimidate my disabled neighbor? I'll make sure you get dropped by your sponsors. I've lived in this apartment complex about a year or so, and it's pretty nice, I suppose. My next-door neighbor is an older lady who happens to be disabled. While I don't know the actual extent of her disabilities, I know she needs help from time to time, and if I'm around, I try to help. She's really sweet, and about once a week, she'll make me a plate of something homemade to eat since I work nights and really don't cook. Her pork chops and fried cabbage are fire. We both live upstairs, and she uses a wheelchair. But she can walk up and down the stairs slowly, and if I'm around, I'll carry her wheelchair down, but her daughter usually does it. Her daughter picks her up every morning on her way to work and takes her to this community center every day so she can get out and socialize and such. This is where this guy comes in. I like to call him Young Douche. YD is your typical piece of crap in that he's super obnoxious and everything. He drives a souped-up Subaru that's really loud and plays his music so loud I can hear the bass from upstairs. He also likes to park in the one handicap spot. Our apartment's manager is super crappy and they don't get involved with anything and refuse to get involved with this. Now, before he moved in, my neighbor's daughter used to park in the handicap spot to pick up her mom, but since this D-head started parking there, she's had to park in front of his car so she can get her mom. I tried to be nice and left a note on his car, but nothing really changed, but it was no big deal at first. One morning, I'm asleep and get woken up to this guy just holding down his horn nonstop. My neighbor's daughter had parked in front of him, and he couldn't get out. When I looked outside, I could see him get out and start harassing both my neighbor and her daughter. I could hear him talking crap, so I put some pants on and walk outside to see dude all in the daughter's face. She's like 4'9", so he's looking down on her like he's gonna punch her. Then my neighbor tried to calm him down, and she put a hand on his elbow, and he slapped her hand away hard. I saw that and ran downstairs, but as soon as I opened the gate and he saw me, he backed off and got back in his car and started honking his horn again. I waited there until they left, then he left, not before he flipped me off while driving away. So at that moment, I knew I had to F with him. My other neighbor knows him and told me about dude. Apparently, he's big in the custom Subaru scene and does shows and crap with his car all the time. He has sponsors that sometimes give him parts, and they use his car in their ads, I guess. Anyway, it took me a while to come up with some good revenges, so I do simple stuff. I had expired milk in my fridge because I don't really drink milk often, but I like cereal occasionally and just had some, so I'd start putting a little bit all over his car when I got home. After a while, you can smell rancid milk all over it. But that wasn't enough. I needed a real big FU. So my other friend found out that he had this big show coming up, and dude had a photographer come in and take pictures of him with his car. The night before the show, I go to AutoZone and get the crappiest decals and bumper stickers I can find and spent about an hour and a half putting these all around his vehicle. When I was done, it looked horrible. I even did a D of Honda, Ford, Lamborghini, and Fiat decals on his hood. While nothing I put wouldn't permanently damage his vehicle, it'd take hours to take it all off. So about 6 a.m., when I guess he was going to the show, I hear screaming. He's yelling so loud that some other neighbors go outside and see what's up. When they see it's him, they laugh and go back inside. He then called 911 and they show up, but it's not like there's anything they can do. Then the cop actually gives him a ticket for parking in a handicap spot without tags, and then they left. Apparently, he had to make it to the show for his sponsors, or else they were going to drop him. Supposedly, he was hard to work with, and it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, even after all that, dude still kept parking in the handicap space. Eventually, when I got home from work, I'd just start throwing trash on his hood. I once threw a chocolate shake at his windshield. Seeing this car in the handicap space every night really peed me off for some reason. Anyway, he eventually moved out. Still hate that guy, though. I think it might be a good idea to document how often he actually parks there, just in case this ever escalates or you or that family need that kind of evidence. And our last story. Psychopathic grandmother. My bro and I live with mom on the top floor of the apartment. Grandmother lives in the bottom. My mom's diagnosed with aggressive cancer. My grandmother becomes the devil incarnate. She knew she has life estate in the property if my mom passes, means she can live there till she dies, but can't sell that right to the property to anyone. We're not rich by any means, but my mom leaves her $100K too for the upkeep. It's not enough. The life estate is worthless to her. She doesn't want to live there. She wants the money from selling the house. From the time that my mother was dying, my grandmother made her passing an absolute misery. 5 weeks before my mother passed, we tried to stage a effing family intervention for my grandmother to ask her to please stop berating my mother over monetary matters. My mom invited a social worker. That poor guy tried 7 times to get her off the topic of money, to think about family and coming together. She consistently turned the topic to how she was always my mother's milking cow. And the way she said it, good God, the sing-song passive-aggressive victimized voice she adopted, the drawn-out sighs, made the people who heard it physically ill. My gorge rises as I write. The social worker told me privately that this was hopeless and that he was truly sorry. You could tell he meant it sincerely. She then starts to send out emails to all our mutual friends and family saying my bro and I were spoiled, abusive, don't deserve an inheritance, and attach some 200 receipts for household items that she had gifted to my mother and wanted back now. Some people believed her. Others were just so weirded out being dragged into such a private dispute that they vowed to remain neutral, keep their distance, and slowly cut off contact. We lost a lot of our social network. My mother was impressionable and childlike due to the brain cancer. 4 weeks before she passed, my brother calls to tell me Grandma's trying to sneak a lawyer into our apartment. She wanted my mom to change her will to exclude us. After racing home, we had a shouting match in our apartment and told her to get back to hers. The lawyer at least had the good sense to F off. Then she falsely accused my bro and me of elder abuse. She said we barged into her apartment and pushed her around and threatened her. Didn't happen, not even a little. 3 weeks away, get interviewed by police, joy. The day we moved my mother into the hospice was the day my dear granny decided to change the locks to our apartment. Took us 6 months in court to get our possessions back. Luckily, we had someplace else to live. We found out later that before any of this, she had secretly sold off an apartment of my mom's in the old country and illegally pocketed $16,000. So the revenge. The revenge was simple. We waited until she sued the estate. The revenge was finally telling her that the executor of the estate, me, but not me, was the only person who could buy out her life estate in the property and was bound to negotiate in good faith. She didn't know that. It was telling that her life estate was valued at over $300,000, that it was everything she ever wanted, she didn't know that either. It was informing her that all she needed to do was ask for cash in lieu of the life estate, that I could not refuse such a request as executor. She had no clue. And finally, it was telling her that thanks to her actions, she would never see a red cent of it. She tied up the estate with her own vexatious lawsuits and unlawful garnishment. To put it mildly, it would be most improper to settle any estate with such outstanding disputes. My bro and I are young, we can wait. She's old, she can go to hell. So I explained to her that every year that goes by, the value of her life estate loses about 12 grand. She didn't seem to like that at all, remembering it's giving me a semi. It's been 4 years. I tell you, there's nothing more satisfying and rare than seeing a sociopath realize how much hubris and deceit has hurt their own self-interest. For all the feigned emotions, the desperation then is truly authentic and, need I say, gratifying? Of course she squeals, but it's not too late. The appropriate response then is to laugh openly in her face, so I did. I really couldn't stop. And unlike hers, my tears were authentic. Last I hear, she's suing her previous lawyer for misleading her. He dropped the case when we pointed out that she had forged her banking statements and her submitted evidence. She did it to hide that my mother had years earlier lawfully bought her share in the ownership of the house. Another law firm has picked her up, but her lawyer has delayed action for many months now. Irritatingly, it still lingers over our heads, but we planned a motion for dismissal at cost. We think she moved back to the old country because it's cheaper to live there, leaving behind $400K and any hope of settlement. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.